of you here to Shasta Environmental Alliance's 2022 Candidates Forum. And my name is David Ledger, and I'm president of Shasta Environmental Alliance. And this forum is co-sponsored by the Sierra Club, the local chapter of California Native Plant Society, and Win2 Audubon, and North State Climate Action. And now we especially want to welcome the candidates who are taking their time to come here and give us their views, and they know they're in front of a lot of people who are very friendly to the environment, and we really appreciate them being here. Now we've got 9 candidates. So Susan Wilson's going to introduce all of the candidates rather than have me do it because we're kind of limited on time. And I know you have a lot of questions. So first of all, I want to thank the audience for participating, and especially for all the candidates for coming here to present their views. Now in a few days, these are going to be posted on YouTube. Unfortunately, the Shasta Environmental Alliance website crashed yesterday. So I've been kind of like pulling my hair with that. They've just about got it done, and they think it'll be back up tomorrow. But anyway, so it's going to take a day or two, and then we'll have links to some of the groups that are co-sponsoring this. So anyway, so thank you again to the candidates and all of you who are attending here. I'll turn it over to Susan Wilson.
Thank you. Whoops. So now you all know who I am. I am the moderator this evening. Redding is one of the many California cities operating under the council manager form of government. How many of you knew that? Lots of you knew that. Under this system, the council establishes the policies under which the city operates and appoints a trained and experienced city manager to administer the affairs of the city. So as we elect the city council, we're electing those people that establish the policies that the city operates under. The Redding City Council, I know you know this, but has 5 members. The term is 4 years. In this election, we have 10 candidates running for 3 positions. We have 9 of the candidates here tonight, which I think is simply outstanding. So let me just quickly go down the row. You will notice I have them in alphabetical order. That's not the order in which they appear on the ballot. We have Tanessa Audette. Tanessa Audette, and she has entered as a businesswoman on her ballot thing. James Crockett as a teacher. Michael DeQuisto is the incumbent in this race. Jan Hill, deputy clerk. Joshua Johnson, business owner and developer. We are missing Jack Munns, who's a retired police sergeant. We do have Marcus Parton, business owner. Alex Shea, housing finance executive. Jordan Valenzuela, business owner, and Kimberly Volmers, mother and educator. Just to remind you, the election will be held on the 8th of November. Mike Flanagan back there already went over the how you can find the video. We are not live streaming this event tonight. Sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't.
We're trying right now, Susan. It's
okay.
Working.
We're trying right now.
It wasn't working when you started, so thank you, Susan.
Maybe. Let me describe our format for this evening. The order of speaking will be rotated. Mike DeQuisto pulled the star, so he will be the first person to speak, and then we will rotate who starts. Each candidate will make an initial statement of 2 minutes about their background, area of concern, and reasons for running for office. The questions will be directed at the candidates in rotating order. So Mike will start first, but then Mr. Hill will go second. So that we'll answer the first question first, and so on. Sorry, that gets confusing. The same candidate is not always the first responder, and the candidates will have varying amounts of time to answer the questions. the timekeeper, Muffy Berryhill down here, and I will communicate, and we will communicate loudly so you will know what exactly we're saying and how many seconds you have for the question. The timekeeper will hold up a yellow card indicating 15 seconds and red card indicating stop. I want to remind you that you do not have to stop dead when the red card goes up, but you do have to stop within about 10 or 15 words, okay? So just, some of you have a tendency to talk because I've been watching you. I'm just warning you ahead of time. I am warning you that I will say, that's enough. You can stop now. So just keep that firmly in your mind as you go along. Each candidate will also have the opportunity to make a closing statement of 2 minutes. So tonight we have questions from the organizations who are members of the Shasta Environmental Alliance, and we'll be asking those questions first. But we already have, I see, a dozen questions down here from the audience, so we will do the questions from the audience after that. And we'll go as long as time allows. We hope to be done at 7:30. So, with that, if anyone from the audience does have a question that they do feel strongly that we should at least look at, please get the question up to these ladies who are right down here below me, and they will look at them. Be sure that the questions are general and apply to everyone and apply to the city council as well. We appreciate your attendance this evening, and with that, let's go to the opening statements. This is so awkward, 2 people I cannot see, but that's okay. Opening statements of up to 2 minutes from the candidates, and we will start with Mike DeQuisto.
Just one. Everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So, my name is Michael DeQuisto. As you can tell, I have laryngitis, so I won't have to talk very much tonight, which is a good thing. I went to Stanford and got a degree in economics in 1975. I went to USC Law School. I moved to Reading in 1994, and it's been my home ever since. I raised my family here, I love it here, and I want to continue to work on the city council. A couple of things that I'm very proud of on the city council that we've accomplished so far. In one particular is the Nurpon open space, which we finally got enough police officers hired to, we're higher than the level we were in 2008. We have park rangers that go in there. We cleaned it up, cleared out 100,000 tons of trash. We had an opening there last Saturday for the statue that was sculpted or welded by the Shasta College people. And it's a fun place to go to. You can take your dogs there and let them run in the park, let them run without a leash. So that's a good thing to go do. The second thing that I'm very proud of is we funded a community, basically it's 2 mental health officers from Hill Country Medical Group and 2 police officers, and they're called out on mental health calls where people need help, but they don't need to be arrested. They don't need to go to jail, they need to be connected with services. And that's been an extremely, extremely helpful provision that we've done, and hopefully we'll continue that. I'd like to increase the funding for that, if there's a way to do that. The city still, the other part that I'm glad of is Stillwater Business Park. We've got about 18 lots in there, and I think 15 of them are in escrow. And we're still working on getting some big employers in here, which I'm very hopeful will happen. And once that happens, that should be good for the community. There's problems that we still need to work on. We need to work on a jail space with the county, and I'd like to see more cooperation in that regard. And we also have increased pension liability. The pension liability is it's an ongoing long-term problem that needs to be helped. It needs to be taken care of. But anyway, I appreciate your vote. I appreciate you coming out. I want to thank everybody tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hill?
Hi, so it's Ian. I don't know why. Thank you. Okay, so I just want to say, some of you know I'm a public servant, but I do have a background in earth science and geology, or biology. And one of the reasons a lot of people move here and stay here is for the nature around us. And so I would want to steward that and keep it for generations to come. That would include our green spaces, blue spaces, and brown spaces. And honestly, the first part of my slogan, chill with Hill, The C stands for climate, and that's specifically for fire danger and water insecurity, because those are two of the biggest factors affecting our community. So, very big advocate for the environment. It's meant a lot for me throughout my life, and I will listen to experts and people in the field when they come to me with studies or issues or something, anything they want to sort of bring to light about environmental impacts and things. I will definitely give people the time of day for that. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson?
Hi, good evening. Thank you for coming tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Joshua Johnson. I'm a local business owner. I'm also a builder and father of 4 daughters with my wife Rebecca of 18 years, and spent the last 8 years since moving to Reading working closely with our economic development corporation here, Shasta EDC, helping launch our startup Reading community, which comes alongside local entrepreneurs to help them develop their ideas and get connected to a supportive ecosystem. I've been on committees with the Reading Chamber, as well as helping with economic development on the board down there for a few years in the city of Anderson. And so I have an outlook and an approach. Typically, the last 8 years I've had my head down, just coming alongside other people who are investing in this city, building businesses. They're in the trenches. These aren't, big wealthy developers or builders or business owners. These are people that are just like you and me, that are taking big risks in this town because they see the best days of this city are ahead, and they are investing in that. And that's why I'm running for city council, is I'm excited about the hope that's here, the people that are living here. I love the natural resources. My wife and I were attracted to this place because of how beautiful it is and because of what we have access to here. And it's an amazing place to raise our family. But I think that we need government to continue to face our challenges with homelessness, fire preparedness, the rising cost of housing, while also aggressively coming alongside people in our community who are investing in its future and helping grow our economy. So I think what I want to do differently, and I know that there are others here that are similar, is I want to bring a spirit of collaboration to city government. I want to generate more ideas than complaints. I want to make government more accessible and creative. I think that's what leadership looks like. And that's what you can expect from me as your city council member. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parton?
Good evening. My name is Marcus Parton. I have lived here with my wife for 22 years. We moved up here because we fell in love with the area and decided that this was where both the business and our residents were going to be. Interestingly enough, being a business owner for more than 40 years, right before that, my job was the Vice President of the Environmental Research and Development Corporation up in the Pacific Northwest. And so there's a background that spanned a long distance of time. The focus of my employment and work over most of the last 40 years has been structuring the acquisitions and dispositions of larger real estate projects, primarily in the land end. For the last 20 years here, we've had a lot of local involvement, including in the last decade, I've had 3 city appointments with the Community Development Advisory Committee, where you got a background on both the needs of the area through nonprofits and distributing funds to those based upon how effectively they distributed those funds throughout the community. Also the Charter City Committee on how to make a city more efficient, perhaps. And then lastly, as a commissioner and vice chairman, the Reading Electric Utility Commission. We have a $150 million electric utility that's very complex. And the more in-depth background we have on that, the better decisions that can be made to keep rates down low and attract businesses into our area. So as far as my background and what I'm looking to do with the city is utilize the experience that I've got. I've testified in public hearings before the council. I've advised the council on a number of subjects. But from an entitlement standpoint and real estate standpoint, I've gone from full cycle, the start of a project to taking to fruition. As an example, affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shea?
Thanks everybody for coming tonight. My name is Alex Shea. I moved here from New York City 7 years ago, and I married into a Reading family who's been here since the 30s. Now what I can tell you right off the bat is I did not know what I was missing when I lived in New York. I didn't know how much I loved mountains. I didn't know how much I loved trees. I loved mountain biking, learned to ski at Shasta, and I didn't know how much I loved the sky. You just can't see the sky in New York. And so the next step was, how do I stay here? How do I build a family here? And so that's when it all tied into opportunities that are here. And I want to tell you a little bit about retaining the rich cultural heritage, the rural beauty that we have here. Fostering that is one of my top priorities. And even when we're looking to grow the economic base that we have here in Reading, we need to keep one eye on environmental concerns. We need to keep one eye on environmental policy, because I can tell you unequivocally, environmental policy is economic policy. They are inextricably linked, and they are tied together and interwoven. And that's what I bring to you. My degree is in finance from NYU, and everything in government costs money. And that's what I can propose to you guys and suggest. I can come into the government and as a city councilor and as a council member and say, hey guys, if we want to do a tree ordinance, what's the cost? What's the risk? Let's quantify everything and think through it systematically, methodically, and tackle it as all the while hearing as many differing, opposing perspectives as possible, because you cannot quantify everything. There are some elements that are qualitative as well. My goal is to build a better Reading for my daughters. I have a 4-year-old and I have a 1-year-old. They were both born here and they love Reading. And I want to build a better future for them that also honors the rich cultural, rural heritage that we have here in Reading that father-in-law and great-great-grandparents have stewarded over the years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Valenzuela?
Hi, it's nice to see you all here. I am a third-generation Reading resident. I am a small business owner, and I have taken my business from just a little sole proprietor massage therapist all the way to an LLC where I have averaged around 10 employees now. And so doing that for 8 years has taught me a lot as a business person. It also has networked me with the other businesses in town, and basically I got to connect with everyone through chamber, local networking groups, just being heavily involved in volunteering, sponsoring, and showing up to community events. So when I think of running for city council, I think of taking care of my community, taking care of the other local businesses that have been here and may have been struggling through these past few years, just like us. And so I want to make sure to take care of our community, also take care of our families. I have a 3-year-old little boy and a 6-year-old little girl, and I just want to take care of them just like my parents have before them. And I grew up great here. I want to make sure it continues with crime being reduced, and that will make sure that our local businesses and families are taken care of. And so with that, thank you so much. I look forward to the next questions.
Thank you. Ms. Volmers?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Kimberly Volmers, and I'm so excited to see such a wide array of different faces this evening. It's very exciting to be in quite a different audience, so thank you for coming out tonight. I wanted to share with you how I spent my weekend here. Oh, there's a lot of stuff. There's stuff. I did go out on Saturday to the Nerd Pond area for the cleanup, the community cleanup, and I'm not sure if any of you were out there, but it was an amazing turnout. It's something you see in movies that you feel like is made up. There were over 100 people out there clearing brush by hand, and it was really rad to see that, because I feel like the things that we enjoy, we never quite see the process, and it's so important for our community to be part of that, because stewarding that and taking care of it means we have our skin in the game and our literal hands around the things that are being cleaned up. And then I also attended the powwow at the Reading Rancheria, and to know that our area has that culture. And then the next day I went to Providence Farm that's right there off the 5. And the technology that we have in our area is tremendous, and the way that it's going to impact us now and going forward is something that I'm really looking forward to. Because as much as we want to preserve and we want to have sustainable growth and progress, there are technologies that come with that we have to have the foresight as a community as a whole to make sure that we don't be last in the game, especially in California. Our rural area needs to always participate and always have our voice heard throughout the entire state so that we sustain and remain the way that we are, so different from the rest of the state. So I grew up here since I was 8, and I'm raising 4 daughters here with my husband, who's very brave with 4 girls. And I'm looking forward to all the questions you have for us tonight. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Ms. Audette?
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Sorry. Okay. My name is Tanessa. My degree is in political science, and I grew up in Los Angeles. I actually grew up on a bus traveling. My parents had a band, so I had a very colorful beginning. I have a huge family. I come from 6 kids, and my mom from 10, my dad from 6. So I've grown up with a lot of rich family, lots of diversity, lots of different types of people, opinions, ideas, and every one of us has them. So I started my career in business. I worked for Black & Decker. They own DeWalt Power Tools, so that's the company I worked for. I did a lot of marketing for them, loved it, and then had kids and stayed home with my 3 kids. I've got one's here tonight, but I have 3 teenagers, so, you know, pray for that. And yeah, it's less intense than politics, so, you know, I'm here. So we set out on a journey to, my husband and I, to do things differently for our kids, and when they were pretty young, we decided LA is not the best place to raise them. And so we all made the trek up here to Redding to start a new life here, and we've been here for the last 9 years, and it's probably the best decision that we've ever made. And I was fortunate enough to volunteer on a political campaign in 2015, which was amazing, and I caught this campaign bug, and so I have been running campaigns in Redding for the last 7 years. I have a consulting business called Call to Action, so if you feel like it's time to step up and do something in government, you call me and we go run together. And so this year I decided it's time for me to throw my hat in the ring. There's so much good that's happening, and it's the momentum of Redding is why I'm running, not because there's everything that's wrong, but because you're all the people that know how to make it right. And so I wanted to be doing that and going after that. So if you want to know anything about me, it's that I do come from a large Italian family, and everybody is family. And so you'll find that I am constantly trying to connect with people. So if you see me or if you know that we're doing something, please come ask questions.
Thank you. Mr. Crockett?
Life is a journey. I spent most of my life not knowing anything about Redding, California, that it even existed. I grew up in Casper, Wyoming, where it's very cold and very windy. It's the, I don't know if this is true, the internet says it, so it must be true, but it's the 3rd windiest place on the face of the planet that has people living there. You open the door and it flips around, and you know, you gotta go fix that. It's an experience that I wanted to leave. And my plan was to go to Brisbane, Australia. And I came up here to visit a friend, and they said, let's go swimming in May. And I was like, we don't go swimming in May where I'm from, because the water's very cold. And lo and behold, I got in the water, and it was nice. And I'm floating in Whiskey Town, looking around. I'm like, I don't know about Brisbane, but there's no way it can beat this place. So I moved here. And the day I moved here, I met a wonderful woman, now married, have 4 kids. Life is fast-paced. 4 years ago when I ran for city council, a question got asked, like, what do you do with the environment? Are you, do you do anything like go trails or anything? And I'm like, I got a 5, a 3, and a 1-year-old. I'm just trying to keep my neck above water. But I'm happy to report I have a bike rack on the back of my van now. I have bikes for all my children, and we go riding on trails, and it is great. When I wake up in the morning, I feel like I've won the lottery. I live in my opinion, the best place. My wife and I every once in a while talk about, do we want to move anywhere? And the answer is always a resounding no. We love it here. We love the environment, the opportunity. And so, yeah, just waking up every morning feeling grateful for the healthy relationship I have with my wife, with my kids, with the community. So I really see Redding as the place to be, the place to stay. And I think our biggest leverage is our natural beauty and wonder. It's what brought me here. It's what brings a lot of people here. So the idea of protecting it and making sure that other people around the world can see what we have and bring those people here. So I'm interested in pursuing policies along that end.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to the questions. Mr. Hill, you'll be answering the first question first. Do you support a new tree ordinance for Reading that will help us to preserve our native oak trees during development? If so, do you support mitigation fees for the removal of oak trees when they cannot be preserved during development that the city can use to plant and maintain trees elsewhere in the Reading tree canopy, and why? You have 90 seconds.
So yeah, someone said short answer, yes. But there's more to that because having native species in your area is, I mean, the entire ecosystem around here, it's the native ecosystem. So when you work to preserve that, it benefits not only the trees, but everything else that has come to rely on the trees and everything that ties into them. And so there was a lot to that question. Trying to remember what else was there. So I would...
Mitigation fees.
Okay, mitigation fees. Yes, because taking those trees out is not a burden, but it does have an impact. And so you can't just take these trees out and then expect nothing to come of it. And so there has to be some sort of mitigation to replace them, to address the impact that taking all those trees out has. And so I would be in favor of some sort of program or tree ordinance for mitigating the destruction and displacement of the native trees that we have. So I'm not necessarily an economics guy, so I don't know specifically how far to go on that, but that's why I would defer to people who do know that, and I would listen to them, and then also listen to environmentalists and other people who want to keep these trees.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, would you like me to repeat the question? Or you got it? Okay.
Well, so I am a small developer. I'm doing a housing project down in South Reading, also did one downtown. I think that for me, it's going to come down to balance. It's going to come down to the balance between cost of housing, which is in particular an issue nationwide, not just in Reading, versus preservation. And I would love for us not to always have a conversation where those things are pitted against each other, but sometimes they do require us to sit in the tension of those things. Because we all love this place and we love the environment here. I'll give you an example for my development. Instead of clear cutting our development, we wanted to keep the mature trees, which cost me in the end about $70,000 more. Clear cutting is a lower cost way of development because you can flatten the ground, you don't have to build with the elevation, there's a ton of things you can do a little bit quicker and faster and easier when it comes to dozers. We decided to go the hard route. Now, Snowmageddon had another plan a few years later, took out a lot of my trees anyway, which was a sad day, but right now, when I'm building a home, I have to have 5 trees per quarter-acre house site. And so what's nice is that a lot of the trees that we left usually provide for about half of that requirement, and then I have to plant a few additional trees. I think that the best approach is to have a thoughtful one when it comes to development. One that kind of says, hey, how can we partner with the environment while we're developing? But sometimes it just means that we have to take a tree out. Sometimes when it comes to underground utilities and the parking requirements and some of the other fire preparedness requirements when it comes to fire marshal, and you get that and you push that project through the pipeline, it's going to require us to plant trees elsewhere or to mitigate in other ways or to come up with other alternative plans. And that's why I say we have to sit in the balance. It's a tension, there's a lot of nuance in it, but I can guarantee as a candidate and as a council member, I'd be willing to sit in that tension with you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Parton.
Interestingly enough, I've been through a tree study where we've conducted it on a major property and preserved a lot of oaks, but also on another project that I was involved, went through as the tree survey was being conducted, a period of hours going through and working to preserve the trees that are in the area. In direct answer to the question, I think there should be mitigation costs to replace those trees. I was somewhat astounded when I saw the Costco development come in and wipe out all those trees. And so, again, balance is important, but another way to look at it. I know I happen to be our vice president of our homeowners association, and we have rules within our homeowners association about taking out trees. And if you don't have a clearance to do that, if there isn't a sure need, then it really doesn't happen. The exception of that lately, and where that balance, I guess, comes in, is from fire protection. Right now we had a neighbor who had to take out 16 trees to get fire insurance on a new sale. And so, there is some balance there. What do? I think with new development, mitigation fees is a answer. You replace it, and when you can, you preserve those heritage trees that we can and the natural species trees.
Thank you, Mr. Shea.
Support tree ordinance. I'd say yes. Now, here's my caveat. Again, I want to reiterate, good environmental policy is a good economic policy. And let me explain by illustrating. My wife and I are trying to buy a house right now in this crazy market, and the first filter that she looks for is, are there trees? Trees add a tangible or even intangible value to prospective homeowners. I was having a conversation with a local city leader about a year ago, and we were, comparing neighborhoods. What's your favorite neighborhood, Alex? Well, I like the Sunset neighborhood. Well, why is that? And we go back and forth, and we finally land at one conclusion, which is there is a respect of the geography and the topography, and more importantly, the trees that are there. If you've never been there, you have trees in the median, in between, on the main drag on Hallmark Ave, and it actually adds tons of character. It adds a lot of value to that, even tangible economic value. My father-in-law was in town when Sunset was being constructed, being developed. God knows how many years ago. It was, he was saying that the values have always held there. So again, smart, long-term economic policy goes hand in hand with environmental policy. And so the next item that I want to address is mitigation fees. So as a whole, I think it is an answer. So as far as I know, it's what, $368 per 6 inches of diameter for the trees that are in question that need to be assessed at the moment. I would want to look into, hey, well, what are we actually doing with those fees? What are the use of proceeds? How are we tackling and using these fees effectively and efficiently? And one other way is looking at, I was talking to someone in the garden tract recently, and he points to his sidewalk, and you see all the slabs going up and down, and he says, hey, we need to plant the right oaks because you have to consider the root systems, which cause more deferred maintenance down the road. Things like that to consider.
Thank you. Ms. Valenzuela?
So yes, I support the tree ordinance. It actually made me think of a story. Whenever I was growing up, I was definitely a spirited child. And so me and my friend, actually there was this corner house that was about to be developed on, and we thought it was important enough to go out on our scooters and have little picket signs saying, don't build here, don't. No one was around to even hear it. But basically, whenever I saw the building happen, many wonderful families have lived in there. We have had so many wonderful neighbors. So when Marcus said about the balance and approving of mitigation fees, I totally understand that. Fire insurance is crazy. My husband's a mortgage lender, and he has been dealing with all of those issues with trying to approve people, and either insurance isn't coming through or whatever the issue is, but that's a big one. And so I definitely think there should be mitigation fees, but also I understand that we have a need to house people in the area, so there has got to be a balance, and I really want to take care of the environment as well as our families. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Volmers?
Yes to both is my answer. The short answer is yes, and I see the need for the updated ordinance because often I see that as things advance and as populations grow, which Reading has grown a ton since I was young here, and the laws have to constantly change with the changing times. Our population has grown and shifted. So many people have left in the last 2.5, 3 years, and there's a lot of new people here. So as we see a lot of development change, like the Costco build that to me was catastrophic in a way, to drive up or down the 5 or come across South Bonneview, and it completely changed how the landscape looks. And I cannot quantify in my brain why it was necessary to completely obliterate every single tree in that lot. So I would definitely advocate for an ordinance because it will set the precedent for big developers as well as small ones. And I think that there could be an ordinance to where it's different if you're a small developer versus a large corporation like that that comes and to me showed no cognitive thought process to preserve anything, which affects animals and different species of insects and the heat here. We need the canopy and we need the trees because it is so hot. We need it to stay and be balanced with what we have and preserve as much as we can.
Thank you. Ms. Audette?
Yeah, I think probably calling it attention is a very good term to use. It's difficult, especially when you're in a position of a city council member, to be balancing the fact that you need the economic development, you need TOT tax, you need all these types of factors that are coming in, and you also want to preserve why you even moved here and why you live here and what you love about being in Reading and in Shasta County. To change the nature of where we live and how we live is definitely a constant tension of the two things and the two values, but there's a way around it, and mitigation fees may be one of them. The specific plan is another one. You know, if we know where we're planning for things to be built, we can also know in advance of where we need to be planting. We can be strategic about this. We don't have to be surprised that development is coming. When we have strategic plans that kind of map out where development can go into the future, we'll know that that will displace trees, and we can begin that process before we get to that, so it doesn't feel so catastrophic or that it's happening with just by happenstance. So I do think that there's enough people that care deeply about nature, that care deeply about what it looks like, what our canopy is. It's hot here, it's very hot here, and we want to be able to protect not just right now and what we have, but into the future. And so I definitely believe that having the strategic plan of where we're planting, where our open spaces are, what's the next thing to include in our open space is a better strategic way to go after it, as opposed to being surprised when development comes.
Thank you. Mr. Crockett?
So going to echo some of the thoughts already shared, but balance is of course needed. For the 6 years I've watched City Council, some of the decisions I wrestle with the most internally, because it seems like both people have very good perspectives and the needs are great on both sides in terms of development and preserving green space. You know, my thought is we build around rivers, right? Why can't we build around trees? And a lot of times there's not a will to do that because it's more expensive. But I think there is tremendous aesthetic appeal in terms of economic value when you have green space in new development, and education along that regards and helping people see that value, especially for a local area here, would be really important. And hopefully developers will be more creative, and partnering with people that have thought about it and have creative solutions would be great. And as far as taking out trees, I think that would be more on a case-by-case basis, because sometimes they do need to come out from reasons mentioned. But I feel like there's often other solutions that can be pursued and should be pursued. And again, the economic vitality of our green space, this is the thing that brings people here. At least it brought me here, right? It's our, in my opinion, our #1 economic value in terms of bringing money in. If we ever get a big fish here, they're not going to move here for any other reason probably than there's people that are going to work in that company that want to be here in this area. So again, it's a high importance to make sure we build around and maintain green spaces in developments that balance those.
Thank you, Mr. DeQuisto.
So as the only city council member, I can speak from experience. The city council has lots of things to decide. It's like juggling in a circus with all the balls in the air and which one is more important, and there definitely has to be balance. The tree ordinance, there's about 4 or 5 different ordinances that affect trees in the city of Reading. The committee that we just appointed has about 15 members on it. Each council member appointed 2. And there were some from some planning commission and some other people. So there's 15 to 20 people on there. They're going to start meeting in December. Hopefully, if I get reelected, I'll have to vote on it, so I have to be careful what I say and not make any final decisions now. But in principle, I don't have a problem with development fees or impact fees for removing trees. The question becomes, like some of these other candidates have said, how much do you charge? What do you do with the money? And where does the money go? And where the money goes is most important, because the city is good at taking money up front, and then they're okay while you're building the project and sort of protecting the trees. But afterwards, on the enforcement level, it kind of gets lost in the abyss. And if you don't have enforcement, and you make somebody put a bunch of trees in, the trees all die, what are you going to do about that? You haven't accomplished anything. So it's a process that you need to follow to do it. But I'm generally in favor of it.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, you have the next question first. You have 60 seconds to answer this question, everyone. If elected, will you support and encourage Reading residents and businesses to put solar panels on rooftops and apartments and receive rebates from REU for excess power produced? And how would you do that?
Well, I would absolutely support it, except it doesn't pencil right now to put solar on your rooftops in the city of Reading. We have the lowest rates up and down the state of California, and we no longer need to meet some of the requirements by the state, so we kind of removed a lot of the incentive in the city of Reading. However, as a builder, Title 24 requires you to put solar on all new construction. So for our new homes, we put about 4 to 5 kilowatts of solar on each home. All of those costs go right to the first buyer, and actually, a lot of them come right back to the developer because the buyers wouldn't actually pay for that, the additional solar, because it doesn't actually pay for itself. It's a very long payoff. So I would say right now, we're not incentivizing it enough, and I would like to look for ways, which with the Inflation Reduction Act and some other, there might be some new ways that REU can re-incentivize putting solar on our rooftops that would allow us to charge market rate on the open market for excess energy that's created by our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parton?
You know, having our own electric utility is a wonderful thing. People come from all over the world to see how that operates. And it's interesting because even though there's an obligation to promote solar and alternative power, the business of REU is to sell electricity. So with that, in my own personal opinion as to solar, is one of the things we have to be concerned about is grandfathering in, if possible, solar contracts. So once you have a operation, once it's deemed feasible, that you know that that's what it's going to be down the line if you're paying for it over a period of years based upon some projection. So looking at what REU was doing, I was involved in, and we had public hearings in doing the strategic plan for REU. And it's so highly regulated. They not only have to, thank you.
Just finish that thought. Go.
They have to both anticipate what's going to be happening down the line, plan what's happening down the line in the regulation process, and what might happen. It's a very complex business, and the background helped me immensely.
Thank you. Mr. Shea?
I would be supportive of solar panels on rooftops in principle, but it does not pencil out. If we build it in large scale, it actually does pencil out more effectively. And I'll tell you, this is from our REU director whom I spoke to today. The rebate that customers received was 16 cents, which ended in 2021. So in 2021, you saw a massive spike in solar roof panels for residential construction. That dropped off in 2022, so installations have decreased significantly. And the reason why I bring all this up is because, again, thinking about the long term, it's not sustainable if it's all based on subsidies. And if we want to look at if the If the regulatory framework is moving in a direction where we are required to use alternative renewable power, well, let's think of the cheapest, most effective way that actually benefits everybody. And that's actually through solar farms that actually have, that are not invasive to airports and not reflective, and it actually benefits everybody in the city itself.
Thank you. Ms. Valenzuela?
I also had the pleasure of speaking to Director Zettel, and he was very informative and hopes to bridge a communication with certain classes that he already has, and just to let everyone know about what is going on with that 40-year plan. I am definitely going to support and encourage, but I also want to take into consideration the facts of what we're able to do, and I definitely think that increasing incentives would be amazing. But as a business person, I also understand profit and loss and how that needs to play a part. So I am interested to see how we can continue towards that 40-year plan and get updates regularly from the director about how we're doing on that plan.
Thank you. Ms. Volmers?
I would support solar for those who wanted to opt into it, but I don't think that there should ever be something to where people feel pressure or anything negative. And the Reading Electric Utility being such a literal powerhouse of our area, something that interesting that happened while there were in Southern California rolling blackouts, and we had an excess of power that we then got to sell to Sacramento. And I think things like that are a way to maybe find balance. If we have a lot of people who opt in for electric use from solar panels, then we have the ability to sell what we produce. So I think that the longevity of their plan and keeping it in balance and not getting caught up in trends of technology, I think will benefit us in the long run.
Thank you. Ms. Audette?
Yeah, I'm also a proponent of doing solar farms, having spoken with the director, and it just, even Dan Bean, so we do, for Leadership Reading, we do Government Day, and we're out at RU year after year, and they're giving us their presentation on how they're getting renewables and where they are at in the process. This has been going on in California for a while. How are we going to get ourselves to carbon zero? And so solar farm seems to be a better use of our resources if we're able to mass produce that discount comes to us as well, and we can farm it and sell it on the market. So I'm definitely, I mean, if people want to opt into solar on their homes, they're absolutely welcome to do that. But as far as REU, I think it'd be better for us to have solar farms.
Thank you. Mr. Crockett?
So I teach out at Shasta College and teach economics, and from what I understand, economically, requiring solar on houses does not pencil out. Well-intentioned, it does not see the efficiencies that are desired. Part of the problem is batteries. There's a duck curve, and you don't have 60 seconds, can't really explain a lot of some of the electrical terminology, but we're dumping energy during the middle of the day because we don't have anywhere to put it. So having a solar farm, but we've got to have batteries. We've got to have somewhere that we can transfer that energy to, so it can be there when we need it, when the lights are not, or well, we want the lights on when the sun's not there, right? That's part of the problem. So right now, the efficiencies that we want aren't there. There's a couple of big, long, drawn-out city council meetings talking about whether we continue to subsidize. We have met the state requirements and exceeded them. And so right now, it does not seem beneficial to our current power grid situation to continue requiring solar just because of it creates too much when we don't need it, and when we need it, we don't have enough. So trying to figure out a creative solution, batteries basically, and solar farms would maybe be the way to go.
Thank you. Mr. DeQuisto?
So once again, experience counts, I think. REU was paying about 15 cents a kilowatt, and they had long-term contracts with a bunch of customers in the city. And what they did is they came to the council, because the council runs REU just like we run the city and makes all the financial decisions. And they said, we're losing money, we want to end the contracts unilaterally. And that would have caused a huge mess, huge lawsuit, many lawsuits. I oppose that. 2 council members did not oppose it. Fortunately, we came to a compromise, and we said, until the end of the year, you're grandfathered in, and then at the end of the year, you have new contracts and new rate requirements. Unfortunately, the reimbursement that REU gives, which is approved by the council, is not enough to make it pencil worthwhile, even though the state says you have to have it. And you're going to need council members that want to change that. REU's got plenty of money and plenty of ability to do that if they want. They subsidize people all the time. It's just a question of priorities.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hill?
So, Reading is one of the sunniest cities in the country. So, yes, I would agree. It's a natural fit to encourage solar use here. But as some of the other members have spoken about, there's this thing called a Dock energy curve and all that. But basically, without ways to store excess energy, you do waste a lot of potential. So whether that we would store our own power here or make contracts with other cities or areas that can store water, or we make new types of batteries like water pumping and all that, then that would be the best use of encouraging and incentivizing solar use. But also on the other end with REU, planning for multi-year contracts and making sure that people aren't caught in the wind with rate spikes and things like that. And then, yeah, I like solar. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Parton, you're first on the next question. This question also 60 seconds. How would you involve city residents, other stakeholders and agencies in helping to review and comment on the sections of the riverfront specific plan as they are drafted?
The riverfront specific plan is, and that property is one of the gems of the city. I've been of the belief that that should be not sold when others thought that there was a possibility of doing that, but controlled, so we could control that there's not necessarily housing down there or something that wouldn't be the highest and best use for this asset that we have. Certainly forums are interesting to gather input on what we envision, because there's quite a heritage of people that have lived here for many, many years of that area around the city. What should happen? You know, should the rodeo grounds stay as it is, or should it be developed out as more of a complex? I think that we should hold on to our heritage in the development of that plan, and with the planning that is coming forward, have a series of forums where we discuss openly what should happen in that area and let the residents have their speak.
Thank you. Mr. Shea?
I think it's absolutely important to be all ears, not just forums, but also actively listen to what the community's needs are. This is a public asset. This is a shared entry point to the riverfront, which is the crown jewel of Reading. This is the heart, the lifeblood of our city. And this hasn't just been recently, 10, 20 years. This has been when my great-great-great-grandparents in the 30s were enjoying it back then. Now, the question was how, correct? So how can we do that? Well, I think it's just having good active listening skills. Are you asking us to opine on the actual RSP? We also need to consider that CEQA is built into the RSP as well. And so considering the tree ordinance, the impact on the native burial ground, understanding that there has to be enough of an embankment and possibly easements that provide access to public space. Those are my perspectives going into this public forum. But again, it's not about me. It's about what we all want.
Thank you. Ms. Valenzuela?
Thank you. So, seeing that property my whole entire life, going to many rodeos and running the river trail all the time. That place is very well known to me, as well as the parking that we have there now. So with that, I definitely think we need to know everything that is planned of our city. If anything seems like, hey, you should just go off and do something and trust me, we don't have any idea, but we should just trust you. I don't think that's right. I think that we need to be more involved. We should know what's going on with our city. We do know that we need to take care of it. We know that it takes funds to take care of it, but we shouldn't just be blindsided. We should be a part of the process every step of the way. So at city council meetings, I really appreciate you guys showing up. I enjoy hearing all of what the community has to say regarding this issue, and I hope you guys continue showing up, and I hope to be a part of letting everyone know what's going on.
Thank you. Ms. Volmers?
I sort of wrote the question, but I was writing my thoughts. Will you repeat it real quick so I have clarification?
How would you involve city residents, other stakeholders, and agencies in helping to review and comment on the sections of the riverfront specific plan as they are drafted?
As they are drafted is the key. A lot of people feel like the process happens and they're aware of the outcome. And so I think that workshops going on throughout the process will be, it's part of the plan currently, as far as I'm aware, when I listen and when I watch the things that are happening now. That's the stage it's at right now, is to engage with the public, hear from the public. So if it's something that is deeply concerning for you, do not shy away and do not go away. Make sure that you do show up at city council meetings and you email your council members in between those meetings or sit down with them and talk to them face to face. Because having those relationships and hearing from you throughout the process is not just something that is at a distance, and it is day to day the ways that you can participate. So I think workshops and education of why the steps are happening is very important, and I would like to have a visible and active role in the process if I were to be elected, because it would be in its baby stage. So it would be something tremendous because we're going to be leaving it to generations to come after us.
Thank you. Ms. Audette?
So I think there's a lot of opportunity to involve people in the process. And I do think that when you go into city council, it's sometimes incredibly intimidating. Even if you know everybody up there, you're talking for 3 minutes in front of people, and I feel like it's just a power imbalance. And so when it comes to really sensitive issues like our riverfront specific plan, I think it's important to host a public forum, something outside of chambers. So in an auditorium, at one of the junior highs, just getting people, all the stakeholders in the room to voice their concerns so there isn't so much misinformation out there. I sat in the city council meeting workshops the first time around and people got up and said things like, I can't believe you're gonna sell the bridge. And it's like, where did you get that from? And they would do a presentation and people, and they were genuinely frightened that they were gonna just sell off the things that are most valuable to us. So I wanna honor the fact that it's a scary process. Sometimes you hear about things, you're not sure what's true. And so I think a public forum where there could be interaction between stakeholders, where you can hear from the rodeo, you can hear from city council members, you can hear from the same people that city council people have access to, you would all have access to as well.
Thank you. Mr. Crockett?
I think you definitely have to listen to people. I think you have forums and you talk to people until they're done talking. Not everyone is going to get their way, obviously, but everybody needs to be heard. It doesn't matter what kind of interest they have. Talking about the riverfront specific plan, though, I think it was a potential missed opportunity. Now, I'm not for selling the land. I'm thinking maybe a 50-year lease. But the company that was going to develop it, they don't deal in small areas like this. They deal in things like Paris, San Francisco. The dude that was doing the teleconference into the city council meeting, he was a native to Reading. The only reason we were in the running is because he wanted personally to do it because he grew up here. And so I think if I was elected, if I get 2 other council members, I would try to reach back out to him and I'd say, hey, once you listen to our dreams and you build it all for us, would you be interested in a 50-year lease? And then after 50 years, we get it all back. But I'm not interested in selling it, but I would be interested in, of course, listening to everybody, but reaching back out to that professional development company and seeing if they'd be interested in a 50-year lease.
Thank you. Mr. DeQuisto?
So the short answer to the question is, how do you get people to participate? You have them come to meetings like this. You have to get off your rear end and participate and make your voice known, and hopefully people will listen. So the vote was a compromise vote to do the riverfront specific plan. It was 2-2. 2 council members were in complete favor of selling the property to McConnell and the consortium, and 2 council members were not, and Aaron Risner proposed, well, let's just do a riverfront specific plan and not punt the ball down the road. The problem is, if you sell that property or lease it and declare it surplus, which is what you have to do, there will be a deed restriction on the property, which means it rests permanently on the deed, and it says, if you build 10 units of housing down there, 15% have to be low-income housing, and I am adamantly opposed to having low-income housing down there. This is going to be the biggest issue for the city. It's going to come up in the next election, and you have to be careful who you vote for because there are council candidates that are in favor of the sale, and they're not interested in the interests of the citizens for the long-term benefits to keeping the property the way it is.
Thank you. Mr. Hill?
First off, I want to say I am in favor of redeveloping or updating what we already have. I would rather not lose our green space, because I know from experience in other cities that when you lose a green space in the heart of a city, it's nearly impossible to ever get it back. And it's just a really great area, and so I like to keep it. But I also want to say, since it's important to so many residents, I want to understand what they want to do with that space. And so that would be polling, workshops, PSAs, just kind of really getting the word out about that. Because I know from my experience, that first council meeting, there was all this information going around, and I really didn't know what was going on. But after going to the meeting, I had a much clearer understanding and realized I had a wrong opinion of what was going on. And I think that would happen with a lot of residents too. So first and foremost, I would just want the clarity and time for people to process whatever information comes out so they can understand what's actually going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
So this is a really hard reality that we all have to accept. We live in the state of California, which from now on to perpetuity, forever, whenever we have public land and we go to build on it, there will be requirement for affordable housing. What's so amazing about that is that that small percentage we're required to do now is looking better. It has amazing finishes, it has a lot of different things. It's not the same kind of affordable housing that maybe you remember 30, 40 years ago. So I was not for the Riverfront Specific Plan, because if it had done its job on the previous plan, we would have seen development. The reality is unfortunately, we don't have land values that make it possible to lease the land and where that would pencil out for a developer. The land values don't exist there, and overall, it just wouldn't make sense to finance that kind of project. So if we want zero development, then that's the approach we should take.
Thank you. So the next question, Mr. Shea, you get to go first. This is also 60 seconds because we're running out of time, mostly. What would you do to preserve our riparian areas, including those at Turtle Bay, for plants and for wildlife?
So I kind of touched on this previously before, but I would consider, one, it is a crown jewel, it is a riverfront asset. So areas east and west of the Sundial Bridge, maybe consider having permanent protection from development, having easements that provide access, whether it's trails, so there's maybe a good 10, 20 feet, I don't know what code is, so that there is visible access to it and no physical developmental obstructions to getting there. But those are all things, again, going back to my original thesis of a good environmental policy is a good economic policy. And I believe having that mindset in making this determination, we can arrive at a happy conclusion. But those are all things not off the table.
Thank you. Ms. Valenzuela.
Ways I would preserve the areas for plants and wildlife. Well, I would definitely contact these organizations here. I would contact the tribe, as well as other organizations that actually have a lot of feedback on the environment and what has always been here. And then also get feedback on ways that they think that it should be preserved. We also need to analyze certain animals that are becoming extinct and what we want to preserve that has always been here. So I would stay in touch with all of those organizations and get a lot of feedback from them.
Thank you. Ms. Volmers?
What comes to mind is that I would like to support what's been in place, because so far it's been there for quite a bit of time now, and about 20 years, coming up on 20 years maybe, and it looks fantastic. So the maintenance of it has been going well, and if there were gaps that exist, I would like to be proactive about those. And there are most of you probably participate in some of these things, very environmentally minded and ecologically minded people who are participating locally enough to where we can have input proactively, and so I would definitely want to hear that and engage in collaboration with organizations that are in this area. I love the work that Turtle Bay has done in the area, and I think that I never assumed the tourism that would come to just that area, but it sprawls out around and affects everything else around it. So it's been phenomenal, and I would hope to support that financially and otherwise.
Thank you. Ms. Audette?
Yeah, I think we continue to do what we've been doing by keeping it green space. And so if we don't develop down by the river's edge, then we can preserve those riparian areas. So I think that what you see now, even in Nurpon, even after that cleanup, my kids come from the city, and so having a relationship to the river means you have access to the river. And so going down to Nurpon now is an incredible sight to see. I don't know how many of you have been out there on a nature walk since they reopened, but I mean, you can see the fish in the channels. It's absolutely beautiful. And so I think if we continue to keep those spaces green, we don't develop directly onto the riverbanks. I know even part of the specific plan that was proposed up at the Civic Center had all of those areas were not going to be developed. Those were going to stay natural habitats. So I think if we continue to protect our river, protect the shores, I think that then we'll continue to protect that space.
Thank you. Mr. Crockett?
So in terms of a lot of the green space, not just the one mentioned but other areas, I would really like to see much more proactive government policy, not wait until something is encroaching and thinking, oh, maybe we should do something to protect that area. But look at the areas that we have. I mean, there's a special zoning we can do. The way we were able to clear out Nurpon is we declared it, you know, an environmental place where you can't have trash and stuff like that, right? So we were able to go in and clean out the trash. I think that we could, as a city council, draft some sort of ordinance that would create special zoning areas around the city, and of course getting input from the citizens. What is most important? Where should those zones be? Where we will forever not develop, because it's part of what we as a people own and have as our green space, and this is where we go to get away from the development. So I think that's incredibly important, and if we're not proactive about it, then we have to be reactive when someone starts to build something, and that's when everybody kind of gets upset, right? So I really think a more proactive approach and figuring out places to zone and protect now, and you know, go too much rather than too little, and then we can always dial it back. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DeQuisto?
So you're in good hands with the current council. All the discussions that we've had about the proposal to buy the rodeo grounds and the convention center, nobody in the council wanted to do anything with the riparian lands around Turtle Bay or the burial grounds or any of those things like that. We haven't taken any formal action on it. We could consider putting a conservation easement over it, but I think that they're in good hands. I don't think it's a worry. It's a natural heritage, and like some of the council candidates have said, once you destroy it, it's hard to bring it back. So I think you're safe for right now.
Thank you. Mr. Hill?
So my first step would establish an understanding of our local environment from environmental groups and other partners, just understanding the state of where we are and understanding also the trajectories, if something's increasing, decreasing, kind of anything like that. So when we do choose to develop, we can understand where developing would have the lesser impact, which I think would be the key to preserving our green areas, brown areas, blue areas, like I've mentioned, which also has the economic benefit of keeping our tourism strong, because as we are seeing, environmental tourism is becoming more and more popular, and a lot of people are coming here more and more often to experience that. We're kind of the base camp for a lot of the mountain areas around here and just all our areas. So preserving that is both good for the environment, but also good for our local economy.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ways is just encouraging and inspiring, and this is something that I think our elected officials can do, and this is what our community can do. I think many of you are doing that with your organizations, is inspiring thoughtful growth, inspiring education, helping people understand the things that are valuable in our environment and elevating those things. I love seeing on social media now a lot of the pictures and videos that are taking place that are amplifying the beauty of our riverfront and our river trails and those kinds of things. And whenever a city wants to preserve something, it ends up becoming a park. What I think is really important us to take is, we have some of the best parks, I think, and some of the best areas in the state as a city, and we have 60 square miles and so much of that land the city has to maintain and as a park. I think as we look to preserving more, do we have the funds to maintain it long term? These are the questions that we have to ask.
Thank you. Mr. Parton?
In protecting our riverfront, part of what we need to look at is an example, the Neur Pond space, when it finally got cleared out, and now it's a lot more usable to the public. But a lot of what's moved from that area has gone to other parts along the river. And so a problem that we have, and what we should look at in development when we go along and think about those riparian areas, is if there is development, maybe look at something like another river city up in Bend, Oregon. I have family up there, visit it often, but they have their waterfront maintained, is all usable, and yet back from there they have economic benefit of commerce. So those areas that are developed can be utilized, but that frontage is preserved as a gem. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, Ms. Valenzuela, you get this one first. What is one item related to climate change that you will bring to the City Council for action? 60 seconds.
Thank you. So for climate change, I know that we have a lot of trash building up with the homeless population that is around, and we really need to take care of them. As we said before, Hill Country has some amazing mental health as well as drug rehab programs. But I believe that combining temporary housing with affordable housing, finding out where they should be and everything, we will see a reduction in the homeless, which will cause less pollution and hopefully reduce the temperature. And then I also see that our lakes are going down. I would really like to find a way to find a solution for that. I know that the mountain trickles down, all of the snow melts it down, and I don't want to see our lake go away or our snow over in Mount Shasta go away. So researching these topics is very important to me because yes, it is a big tourist attraction. It's a big attraction for us and our families going out to these lakes. And so with that, I want to make sure to tackle those two issues.
Thank you. Ms. Volmers?
I'm going to attempt to do something really broad in 60 seconds. Okay, bear with me. So something for climate change that I'm really passionate about is I would love to see the city of Reading go in our parks Monsanto free because it kills native plants and it stops the things that produce insects and different species from thriving here that then impact birds and other big predators. That all of those things impact our people here and will impact the soil and everything else for us to thrive here. So I would want to see the mindfulness all the way down to the dirt, and that would be in every single home throughout the city.
Thank you. Ms. Audette?
So I work for our California State Senator, and so I know that one of the biggest contributors is residential to climate change. And so I would say that having better building practices, doing what we can at the city to work with our development services to make sure that everything that we're doing as far as new building is the most efficient, and if there are rebates to be had at the state level, that we're informing our residents that there are upgrades that they can make to improve efficiencies in their home. It's just the biggest drain that we have is when homes are inefficient, and when we're building new homes, that's great, and we have that happening now in record number, but for our older homes, having those rebates, knowing what the government is providing for you to create the most energy efficiencies in your homes. So that's what I would work on.
Thank you. Mr. Crockett?
So 3 specific things. One would be more charging stations, and we could do more of those as people are going up and down I-5. Quite a few more electric cars out there, so we could get more charging stations. Another one is more trees. Everywhere that we can get trees planted. There's concrete now that the water will soak through, so you can plant trees where traditionally you couldn't have. So looking at solutions with that, with government policy as we expand and build new projects, how do we get more trees out there? And then referring back to the question about solar panels, anything that's got a battery, if we can have it in the city, scooters, green space where you're able to go a scooter through it and get to work or something like that. And that would be a much better option than driving our cars all the time. The footprint of Reading is pretty large, but different electric vehicles that we could maintain and transfer people around in the business areas, I think would be a productive way to help limit CO2 emissions and be a big winner because it's just, in my opinion, more pleasant.
Thank you. Mr. DeQuisto?
So if the speed at which the tree ordinance got enacted, or the committee got enacted, which took 4 years, is any indication, climate change is not very high on the city's priority list. You need 3 or 4 people on the council to get somebody to do something. We currently have a number of programs at REU that are available to help insulate your home and give rebates on certain appliances and things like that. The state every so often offers rebate programs. And I think I would just continue to do that and participate in those programs and try to promote them to the public as best you can.
Thank you. Mr. Hill?
So when I lived in Santa Cruz for a bit, I actually worked for Parks and Rec, and we had policies like water use and things like that in place to mitigate some of these changes that are coming. So first off, for this area though, more immediate would be fire danger. Develop a plan for all residents to know where to go and how, with at least 1 or 2 backups. I know for fire, I mean, my parents' house almost burned down. The chaos that comes with that is really the biggest danger in wildfire. So mitigating that would save lives down the line. But more long-term would be to start on walkability for the city. I mean, I walked here, I really liked it, and I didn't have to drive my car. So working more long-term to make the city more accessible in that sense would be really good for the environment as well. And then just throwing out there, city transition to more rock architecture. So instead of lawns and all that stuff that just doesn't even use water. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
So I was able to talk to Joseph Bowers today at REU, and one of the things that he mentioned that was really interesting about a next click forward for us as a city is the electrification of everything, especially mobile transport at the city. So we have the capacity, infrastructure-wise, of 700 megawatts of capacity, but we only use about 240 megawatts right now. And I think that's a really incredible, and I think you guys would all appreciate, not everyone would appreciate, but I'm glad you would appreciate it. Out of the 100% carbon-free we have to be at by 2045 as state standard, we are already above 80% as a city. The rest of the state is struggling around 40 to 50%. So you're living in a city that's already well ahead of the rest of the state, and it makes me excited to see what we can do to even become more competitive from an economic development standpoint, as well as benefit in the residents here and our environment.
Thank you. Mr. Parton?
Having initiatives with REU that would reward conservation efforts, I think would be a real positive step. And maybe that means smart meters. Some people don't like smart meters, but having usage times that could actually save on the power usage during peak times could help. Interagency cooperation from a fire standpoint, I think has been a big step that we've made forward. So we don't have something like when the car fire starts off and whose responsibility is it? It's one agency or another. There's an overlapping now, so that's a positive thing. From a mobile charging standpoint, we have to make efforts in that regard, but I could only think about those people that were leaving the hurricane area in Florida trying to get out with electric cars, so that's not the only answer. So reward the efforts that we can to the best of our abilities, and I think REU can help.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Shea?
All right, I would love to explore water. Water is a natural resource. It is a premium asset. Kind of give you a quick breakdown. Almost 2/3 of our power generated that we use here in Reading is hydro. 20% natural gas, the remaining 20% wind power. Of all that, about 20% of that is generated here, locally. 2.4% Whiskeytown Dam, and Shasta Dam, Trinity Dam, another 20%. So it's not local. We import a lot of that water. So what can we do to have forethought for our kids and grandkids? Well, one idea is further developing our infrastructure for wastewater. the water that we already put back into the Sacramento, what if we take that and actually use it for processing for irrigation? Because that's painful right now for a lot of residents that live on rural properties. Something to think about. It is a capital expenditure, but again, short-term pain, long-term gain. Benefits the environment, benefits our farmers, benefits our agricultural community, benefits us and our kids in our cities.
Thank you. Now, I have come to the end of the questions that were put together by our sponsors, but I also have to tell you we have another 20 minutes to go, which would finish us up at 7:45. So I am not going to ask the 2 questions that I have from the audience, but I'm sure these gentlemen and ladies will hang about so that you can ask them yourselves. My apologies. So with that, we're going to go to the closing remarks, and Ms. Volmers, you will go first, and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you all for coming out tonight, and please do hang out a little bit so we can see you face to face and hear questions or just your thoughts on what you heard and what you feel about what would benefit our city. I just want to share with you that something that I forgot to say, and I am going to use my time to talk about myself and my platform potentially, just to tell you that I forgot to say this, because if you want to find out more about me personally, please go to my website, volmers2022.com, or come and talk to me, because I think that this is very important, and I forgot to say it with the last question. So I do want to mention it to you, that Senate Bill 1383 was that in California, all green waste has to be utilized in a way that is not wasteful. So we would be fined as a city, and businesses would be fined if it's not recycled. And we have at Providence Farm, and we have a company called Moss Energy, that they use the waste from cows or pigs at dairy farms, and they use, Providence has an ability to connect with other farmers that uses and generates methane gas. So it can be negative carbon footprint for our area, even further than the progress that we've had. So thank you all for coming. I think that that's really important, and it's an amazing technology that we have here in its infancy. And growing up here, I always felt like the things that advanced and progressed places of that nature were far away, and it's here now. And so I would love to see, going forward, all of the community to be in support and behind those types of technology.
Thank you very much. Ms. Audette?
Thank you so much for all those questions. Yeah, I think we have a lot to be proud of here in Reading. We're not just the #1 most prosperous small city in California for nothing. It's because we take what we have and we make the most of it. And in my experience here in the last 9 years, I've seen issues, but I've also seen people coming together in the community from all different types of sectors to solve those problems. We have some incredible, innovative companies, like what Kimberly was saying with Moss Energy. You know, on the federal side, they're going to start regulating methane as well. And so to have a company that is developed a way to trap methane and to use that for energy is a huge benefit to us, and it's happening right here in Reading. And so as SB 1383 begins to roll out, where we all have to compost, restaurants will be composting, we will have all organic waste in our homes will be composted, and that's coming pretty soon. Having companies that are innovating like this means that we're going to be on the forefront here in Reading of developing different ways that'll change throughout California, that they'll use the methodology that we're using. And so whether it's green hydrogen or sustainable aviation fuels, we have quite a lot to be proud of here in Reading. And so it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I do have a website, it's votetonnessa.com. I have videos, and every Tuesday I'm in the community. Tomorrow I will be at Deja Brew for coffee. I'll buy you a cup of coffee. You can ask me your specific questions about environmental issues or about anything, and I'll be there to discuss that with you. But I think what's really important that you know is that all of us care about what happens in Reading, and we care about your unique spin on what's happening in Reading and the values and everything that you bring to the table. And I know from doing lots of events with all of these people, you're in good hands when it comes to people that are engaged and want to know what matters to you, and then always bringing you to the table when it's time to discuss these types of things. So it's been a pleasure meeting you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Crockett?
So we are currently seeing a trend that we really have not seen in all of human history. Pretty much all of human history is people moving from rural areas into urban areas, and it just happens more and more and more, and now the majority of the population live in urban areas. For the first time, and largely due to COVID probably, we are seeing people move out of urban areas and into rural areas. Our greatest economic asset is our beauty. People want to come here, they want to live here, they want to move here. So any policy we create, anything we do, we need to keep that in mind. It is the driving force for our community, and keeping our community beautiful is the right thing to do, I think, on a moral level and our responsibility to the planet. It's also the right thing to do in terms of if we want to grow economically. However, I would caution you, we do want people sleeping under roofs, not under branches. So there is compromise needed as we're developing, as we're figuring out solutions that are good, that are feasible, that are economical. And sometimes solutions might look good at first, but we gotta look into them a little bit deeper. So I wanna challenge you guys. I've seen more comments publicly from this interest group than I've seen from any other interest group in the 6 years I've been watching the council meetings. I think that's great. I love the participation. And I think you guys have lots of great solutions. But I also, again, I want to challenge you to look for creative solutions that also allow for the development for the people that are unhoused, so we can make sure we can take care of those people, and make it so everyone can feel like a winner. So we have a natural green place that's amazing, but we also have places that people can build, and sometimes a tree has to get cut down. Just keep that in mind, kind of, that balance like we've talked about a little bit here today. But I really appreciate the community involvement from this specific group, and I think it's so intertwined with our culture and what's important for us locally, and just this new global trend that's happening as we want to prosper as a community. So you can find out more about me at Crockett for Council on Facebook. You can email me, reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk more about any of the things I've said or any of the questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DeQuisto?
Again, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's been great to having a chance to talk to you. Hopefully we've answered some of your questions. So in my view of the world, and when I've been on the council, the test that I use to make decisions is what's in the best interest of the citizens of Reading. Not what's in my best interest, not what's in the special interest group's best interest, what's in the best interest of everyone in Reading. And there are competing interests. Some decisions are easy, some are hard. You want to buy a new fire engine? That's in everybody's best interest. Not a problem. You want to sell the Civic Center? That's an issue. You want to sell the rodeo grounds? That's an issue. But I've always tried to be open, I've tried to be honest, I've tried to be transparent. I've actually kept the city out of, or tried to keep the city out of certain lawsuits, which cost the taxpayers money, and that was not fun. But hopefully that particular issue is resolved at the moment. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I'm a fiscal conservative. My record speaks for itself. I'm not afraid to question staff. Sometimes I go along, sometimes I don't go along. You just need to have a backbone when you get up there. And one thing that you don't know, candidates can say lots of things until he or she is elected. And I think these are all good candidates, and I think everybody wants to help the city. I have not attributing any bad motives to anybody. But until you get up there and you have to make the decision yourself and support it, you never know what the people are going to do. So do your investigation, do your background, and make sure you vote for the candidate that you think is the best. I'm going to vote for myself, I think. And I'm going to vote for Marcus Parton because I think he's a good, strong candidate. I think that and I'm tired, frankly, of losing 3-2 votes and 4-1 votes. And I think that there's a way to get a new dynamic on the council. So if you like what I have to say, vote for me and vote for Marcus. And you don't have to vote for 3, you can vote for 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hill?
I'll probably be voting for myself as well. So I just want to say, as a science and environmental enthusiast, there's lots of things we didn't get to today, unfortunately. But we didn't have time to get to fire, water, but also invasive species, agricultural methods, weather, all that stuff. So if you want to talk about it, I'll be hanging out afterwards. Feel free to come up, we can talk about whatever. But I do appreciate you all coming out tonight and appreciate all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Yes, I've really appreciated all the questions as well. This has been a great conversation. I want to say that I really love learning. I love spending time with people that are smarter than me. I love asking deep questions and digging into the issues. It's really hard to do that in 90 seconds or 60 seconds or 2 minutes. And you guys have all done a great job. But these are deep issues. And what you need is to know that a candidate is going to sit in the tension of those issues, be willing to listen, be willing to learn, and also have a macro and a micro view at the same time. And I know that it's very difficult to do, but that's what we need our elected officials to do, is to sit in that tension. I'm about thoughtful growth. I don't like to react. I love the idea of planning, looking ahead, like we've talked about tonight, and getting out ahead and designing this space as we want to see it into the future and as we see it growing. I love the city. I love the resources we have. You know, a couple of real quick notes is that because of the Inflation Reduction Act, there are some opportunities that REU says that they have on the horizon, which is the addition of battery power, which could potentially allow us to avoid issues like we had during the heat wave. The rest of California had a significant issue. We just had to pay for a little bit more power during that time than others. I think it's a great opportunity for us to actually look for top line growth, being able to sell excess power outside the area to areas that need it most, because we have such an incredible resource here that we should be grateful for. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parton?
As I said earlier, the reason I moved here was for the natural beauty. We fell in love with the area up here. I'm running, but also when I'm not running for city council, I'm running around the river trail and biking around the river trail. Noah Well was devastated once the fire came through, and then things were reborn. I think we have an incredible opportunity to draw people in this area. Business that we need to help economic growth, the workforce that we need, through now as businesses realize that they can use telecommuting in order to have workers come in. Our area shines if we solve some of the problems that we have out there as far as, say, crime. We need to get those people, we need to get the medical professionals into this area. There's a tremendous shortage here, and as we build the new Dignity facility coming into the area, it's not the money. It's getting the medical professionals up here, and the way to do that is to have a safe environment. I hope the benefit of my experience with REU, with the city over the last 10 years, would be a help and an asset to what we're doing. Also, from a business standpoint, the business background in primarily structuring transactions maybe would have helped avoid what we had in the land dispute down south. So I hope you consider that when you're considering candidates out there. I'm willing to give 4 years of public service if elected, and I would appreciate your support and would honor your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shea?
I'm going to be a broken record. A good environmental policy equates to a good economic policy. They go hand in hand. Everything that the government does costs money. If you want to add a third fireman to an engine, that costs money. If you want to reduce, or you want to fix roads, you want to fix potholes, everything costs money. And I would humbly ask of you guys to vote for me this coming November, because I am your finance candidate with a background for 14 years. Accountability, shrewdness, balancing budgets. I'm doing it day in and day out. And that's also what I studied. Because the last thing I want to do is I want to leave a tax bill for our kids, or an environmental bill for our kids, or possibly even a debt bill, an unfunded liability bill for our kids down the line. All these things play into figures now. There's small numbers now, but because of compounding, everything gets bigger. And even environmental impacts, everything compounds and gets bigger. So we want to be thoughtful about these things, and I want to be your candidate that considers those things in the long haul. My perspective is building for my kids and grandkids, and I hope yours is too. My grandparents left communist China about 90 years ago. And if you want to talk about poor long-term planning, Three Gorges Dam, massive flooding, destroying villages, look to that. That's not what I want here in Reading. And so I humbly ask you guys, consider, vote for Alex Shea in November, and thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Valenzuela?
Thank you all again for coming out. This is a wonderful use of the facility. I've been to many fundraisers here, but I want to say more importantly that when you vote for me, you are voting for someone who is invested in preserving the Reading identity. I have seen it grow and change, and I know that there's a lot to take care of, And yes, that comes with finding out how to get the finances to take care of our city. But I don't want to lose our landmarks, our historical, environmental, wonderful experiences. This is where we get to raise our family and get to remember. I mean, I had my wedding over in the Turtle Bay Arboretum, and just having those memories and going back and remembering them with our family is definitely a big priority to me. And when you vote for me, I can assure you that I will show up, work hard, do the market research, talk to the individuals, and be invested in my community specifically. So it's not just my voice, it's our voice, and you can definitely ensure that you will be heard. Thank you so much. You can find out more information at votejordan.info. And also, I will be available at my spa, Shasta Strong, inside Wind River Resort and Casino, 8 to 10 a.m. on Saturdays until the election, except for the 29th. So you're more than welcome to stop in and get a free chair massage. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give these folks a big hand. Just to remind you, your ballots will probably come out next week, and you can start voting. Election day is the 8th of November. That's the final day you can vote. You can vote for up to 3 candidates. You don't have to vote for 3. You can vote for 1, as we've been told. You can vote for 2. You can vote for 3. So just keep that in mind as you assess what you learned this evening from these folks. And thank you for coming. And would you do us a favor and help David and the rest of us clear up the place before you leave? Some of you strong men, we could use your help. Thanks.